I'm going to read some of my writing again, and want to make sure that you understand that my writing, of course, is always based on what I've said. You know, if I hadn't said it, I wouldn't be able to write it. So what I am reading to you is actually what I'm saying. Yeah. And but since writing is a different way of expressing what you're saying, yeah, because once you have said it, you can sort of articulate it very well in your writing. And so that's why I like to also read my writing, because it is slightly different from my way of talking. And yeah, here is my reading of today. I'm sitting on these roots of this big tree here. And hopefully there are no mosquitoes. I haven't noticed anyone yet, which is kind of miraculous. But let me see where my writing is. I had it here in my pocket. Oh yeah, here. And I must wear my glasses to read. Oh, I do feel something in my neck already. Let's hope they stay away. It's not a long writing and it's not complicated what I'm saying, but it is, as always, very important. Here it is. People possess or seek to possess all sorts of things. Everybody wants to have things, possess things. But they don't, because they can't, possess their own language. Yes. You know, I was just driving down the street and I saw somebody had a bench on their porch, and it was obviously a bench that they had made themselves, because the back part of that bench was actually the the backside of a pickup truck. And so this person had once owned a pickup truck, and that pickup truck he wanted to repurpose or something like that, and he used it as the back part of his bench on his porch. I thought that was really cute. Anyway, people possess all kinds of things, but they don't possess their own language. Yeah, and that is what this writing is about. As long as their way of talking is based on listening to someone else, yeah, while you're listening to me, you're listening to someone else. You're not listening to yourself. As long as their way of talking is based on listening to others, and of course, yeah, making others also listen to them, because that's part of, this whole deal, where we're always busy with each other, but we're not listening to ourselves. All right. So as long as their way of talking is based on listening to others, and of course making others listen to them, they are engaging, without realizing it, in the incorrect use of language. Yeah. And that incorrect way of using language prevents them from listening to themselves and telling themselves, yeah, because you wouldn't even notice that you're telling yourself something that is beneficial to you if you weren't listening to yourself, if you weren't really talking with yourself. It prevents them from listening to themselves and telling themselves what is actually their own language. I need to move because I feel mosquitoes. Oh, yeah, I knew it. Okay, I just gotta walk a little. No problem. And so, what is their own language? They do not know. They have no idea. They are too busy with possessing whatever it is that they believe to possess. But they do not possess their own language. they have never even considered the possibility of having their own language. So they possess a car, they possess a house, they possess, all sorts of stuff, property, they possess a bicycle or whatever, anything that you can have. But they do not even realize that language is also something that you can actually possess. And of course, the only way in which anyone will ever be able to possess one's own language is by speaking and by listening. Yeah, I mean, it should be a no-brainer to use a nice expression. But no, we are not familiar with this. We are not even considering that there is such a thing as possessing your own language. And so we have a weird conceptualization of language where language is not ours. Where language doesn't belong to us. Okay, let me continue reading. And so what they are unable to accomplish with correct this is a difficult sentence. It's a double negative. What they are unable to accomplish with incorrect language, they anxiously possess. Yeah. So there is stuff that you are able to accomplish with your correct language, but with your incorrect language, there are many things which you are actually able to possess, but you don't have it. You may have a lot of things, but you don't really possess it. You don't really enjoy it. You don't really know how good you have it, because you don't have the language that you need to be able to enjoy it, to possess it. Yeah? And of course, people have given all kinds of different explanations to this, like egoism or, possessiveness and stuff like that. No, it was never about that. It was actually about the missing language. Yeah. Anyways, you don't have to believe me, of course, but so they anxiously possess all sorts of things, but they are not possessing the language, the correct way of using language, which actually allows them to appreciate what they have. Do you get it? No, probably not. And yeah, this anxiety around their possession, because that's of course another aspect of all these possessions, that people are very anxious about losing it. They all know that that it is meaningless in some ways, because something is missing and they're all anxiously holding on to whatever it is that they possess. Yeah, because they're fearing that someone will take it away, steal it, or that they cannot hold on to their possessions. But someone like me, I don't have any such fear. I have embodied language, and for me, in embodied language, that fear does not exist. And I know that people with disembodied language, they do not know what I know. And I even know that they are incapable with their disembodied language of knowing what I know, because you can only know what I know with embodied language. So I always return to my embodied language. Yeah, I always return to my embodied language, even though I'm also affected by disembodied language. My own history of conditioning, of course, which is still there. I mean, I don't claim to have completely, you could say, transformed or something like that. There's no such thing. There's just your conditioning history, and then there is a different way of conditioning which can sort of chip away at your conditioning history. And so that's what I'm doing, But I always return to my embodied language, because I just know from my history of conditioning with embodied language, which you don't have, people who have disembodied language, they don't have any kind of history with embodied language like I do. But I know from my history of conditioning with embodied language that I always return to it, in spite of the fact that I am just like everybody else continuously. I'm not continuously, but I can also be carried away by disembodied language. You know, I don't claim to be a saint. I don't believe in sainthood. You know, nobody is a saint. The saints don't exist in my way of viewing things. So even though I can be still affected occasionally, sometimes, that doesn't happen very often, by disembodied language, I always go back to the language which I possess, which is mine. And I just know from experience that this is inevitably always going to happen. So, you know, I've gone through all sorts of trouble to get where I am today. And I have, during all these tumultuous times, hold on to the faith, so to speak. It's not faith, but it is just an experience which I revisited again and again and again, which has sort of showed me the way that I do indeed have my own language, in spite of whatever life is throwing at you. So this is inevitably going to happen in my case, since I know the difference between disembodied language and embodied language. I know the difference between when I listen to myself while I speak and when I don't listen to myself while I speak. Because that is disembodied language. That's what everybody else is into. And that's what we do when we are adhering to the old way of talking in which we're all part of a group. And this group behavior is hierarchical, where someone is supposedly better or more important, more powerful. And you're not really having your own way of talking. No, you have to be busy with others, those who are above you and those who are below you. And you're just as much busy with those who are above you as you are with those who are below you. And the higher you get in the hierarchy, the more you're busy with those who are below you. So, anyway, you don't possess your own language, even though you get very powerful, very important, very well established, very, well respected. No, I have my own language. And so, but once you discover the difference between your embodied language and your disembodied language, you know that you want to have embodied language. And you know also that you never wanted to have disembodied language, even though you may temporarily again get involved in it. I'm going to walk before, because I notice there is just some mosquito that keeps hanging around here, and maybe I can I can sort of just go to another place where that mosquito is not following me. Sometimes it is just one mosquito, you know. It's kind of weird how that is. Here, this is a nice spot. I'll put my bicycle here. Let me see if I can let it. Yeah, it will stay. Okay, that's a nice spot. Look at that. So, however, what was the last sentence? Sorry. Just got to pick it up from there. So, I always return to my embodied language even while or even after I'm affected by disembodied language, my own and the disembodied language of others, since this is inevitably going to happen, seemingly even more so once you discover, this is also hilarious. So the fact that you are affected by disembodied language is going to happen more, seemingly. It's going to seemingly happen more after you have discovered the difference between your disembodied language and your embodied language. And there's a reason for that. Hold on. However, this only appears to be the case Because once the difference between your disembodied language and your embodied language has been noticed, you cannot deny anymore how often you engage in disembodied language. Yeah? So that makes total sense, right? That once you begin to notice the difference, you suddenly realize how often you are actually engaging in disembodied language. Okay. And so it is precisely during this realistic process of identifying your own disembodied language and your own embodied language, that is when you recognize when you engage in disembodied language almost permanently. Yeah, that is really kind of overwhelming in the beginning, because that is what it is. You are conditioned to have disembodied language. You were never conditioned, you were never reinforced for embodied language. So you are, in principle, almost permanently engaging in disembodied language. And so that is why it is that way. And so you've never really noticed the difference between disembodied language and embodied language. But now you cannot deny it anymore, how often you engage in disembodied language. Yeah, hi. Hi. And so it is precisely because you notice this difference that you begin to say to yourself, okay, it is true. I keep engaging in disembodied language, and that is what is needed to stop the disembodied language so that you can have embodied language. Because only in this way do we have the motivation, because now we're talking about motivation. Do you want to stop your disembodied language which you keep having? Well, only when you notice the difference, that is when the motivation begins to actually have its effect. Because now you see things differently, because you want to have embodied language. You don't want to have your usual disembodied language anymore. So we have the motivation to differentiate between disembodied language and embodied language and stop disembodied language, so that we can have what is and what will always be ours. Yeah, that is so, it is so wonderful that you can have your own language. Oh my goodness, it is so good. Disembodied language was never your language. And that is why your so-called mind, your thoughts, or whatever you call it, your internal conversation with yourself, that is why it was giving you so much trouble, because it was all, it was a fantasy, of course, of inner language, but it was all involuntary language. It just kept on occurring without your consent. Yeah. However, the overt nature of language shows us we are in charge of our language. As long as we can speak and listen, as long as we can write and read, we are in charge of our language. And possessing our own language means that we are in charge of our own language.